It has been 6 days since we planted these seeds, and these bush beans are overtaking the seedling tray. They're getting so big that they are blocking each other from the light, and they're blocking the other plants like the beets down here from the light. These bush beans should have been transplanted probably 3 or 4 days ago. So we're going to do that today. Here I have my seedling mix, which is 4 parts sawdust, 2 parts sand, and 1 part perlite. And I just mix up a bunch at a time, and I keep it in these buckets so it's available whenever I need it. I'm going to go ahead and add some water to moisten the soil here before I transplant. I estimated on how much seedling mix I wanted to mix up to fill 2 flats here. Added the water, and now I just found a scrap piece of wood. Before I screed this, I tamped it down to get the moist mixture settled in the box, and then I'm just screeding it to level it here in the box. Now that I've got that leveled, I know I need to add 1.5 ounces of pre-plant fertilizer and 3/4 of an ounce of weekly feed, and then I'll mix that into the soil and we'll be ready to transplant. I'm just sprinkling in my weekly feed and pre-plant fertilizer. It's in the boxes here. Try to evenly distribute it. Looks really good. I'm just going to come back in here and just turn this in with my hand, and then I'll re-scree it and transplant. After I turn the nutrients into the soil with my hand, I did pick up what had spilled out over the sides, put it back inside, then I re-tamped this box to let that settle. Now I'll re-screed. I'm done screeing. I've got a little bit left over, and so that will simply go back into the bucket here, ready for the next time I need to mix up some more. The reason why I'm transplanting these bush beans is because they need more room. And to make the transplanting quick, I'm going to use this transplant template here. The design for this is in the Mittleider gardening course book. I'll have a link for that below this video. I made this a few years ago, and it just takes seconds to mark an entire flat. This has 8 rows of 8 rows, which gives me 64 plants. I think that's really too close, so I'll be planting in every other hole to give these fast growing plants room to grow before we get them into the garden. We have grown these seedlings on our kitchen countertop. To make room for the transplanting, I moved the flat of 50 sweet corn seeds I planted a couple days ago. And now I'm using that space right next to the bean plants to transplant them. That way I just have to pick from here and go over to here. You'll notice here in this flat that we have all the beans planted together. That's because different plants germinate at different rates. So by doing so, I'm able to simply take this section of the seedling tray and transplant it without disturbing the other parts too much. We've got a row of plants here that haven't germinated yet. We've got a bunch of beets over here that have, so I'm just going to be working in between and transplanting. To transplant, I simply take my dibble, and how to make the dibble is in the Mittleider gardening course book. It's very simple to make and a very handy tool. There are a lot of different tools that we make with the Mittleider gardening method that really simplify gardening. This box, instead of using 67 different pots, I can simply transplant them here and put them in here. The advantage to doing that is I can save on space. If I had, I've got 80 plants here, 84-inch pots, I take a lot more room than what I'm going to take in here. The dibble, I use this all the time when I'm working with plants. Makes it very quick and easy. The stamp, to make this, it took time to make, but once it's time to plant, one push, take it out, and now I'm transplanting. So using the dibble here, I simply go down to the roots and just kind of push that plant up. This has been pre-watered this morning with the Mittleider constant feed. The recipe for that is also in the book. I take as much soil as I can with the roots. Notice that these roots are not root bound. I'll come over here. I'll make my hole as big as I can for this. Now this is a lot of soil, so I'm going to probably end up removing soil here. And then I will simply transplant that into here after I get the hole big enough. I want to make sure that my roots can go down straight. So I use my dibble to get my roots down straight. Plant the seed down deeply. And now I'm using my dibble going all the way down to the roots so that there's contact to the soil, to the roots. Look at those beautiful roots, not root bound at all. I'm spacing these out so they have lots of room, so I'm going to skip a hole here and put it right in here. I don't want to grab the plant by the stem, I want to grab it by the leaf. Make a bigger hole. If I break a leaf, the plant, will still do fine. If I crush the stem here, then the plant may die because it needs to take its nutrients up through the stem. I'm probably being maybe a little more gentle than I need to, but I'm going to take good care of these plants. Notice how much space I have between these plants now. There's be plenty of space until we get them into the garden. If I had planted these in pots and then like small cells and then went to transplant them over here, these roots would be severely root bound. But I'm not doing that, even though I'm transplanting these late, because I'm doing this in the flat. It gives me a little time. Now this root's really long. I'm going to actually pinch this root off. This is root pruning, and that will help the plant get the roots down in the direction that it wants. Grab the leaves here, make this a little bit bigger. I'm causing my own problem here because I did not transplant these when they should have, so I'm got a problem with too much soil, too big of roots. Get that down as far as I can in there, and then move the soil back around the roots. Notice I'm going all the way down to the bottom and getting that soil around the roots. So I'll get about 40 plants in here and about 40 plants in the other flat, and then I'll transplant them out to the geothermal greenhouse. I actually got 30 plants transplanted in here. Now I need to give them a nice heavy watering, so I'm using the constant feed, which is 1 ounce of pre-plant fertilizer into the 3 gallons of water. I don't have my watering can made out of a 16-ounce can, so I'm having to use this. It takes quite a bit longer to do it. Also heavily watering it gets the soil settled down and get nice contact to the roots. These plants are going to look pretty sorry for the next couple days, but then they'll perk right back up and they'll be doing great. I've got them transplanted into the greenhouse, which is going to be their new house until we get them transplanted into the garden. Now that I have them watered nicely, I come back through and make sure all the leaves are up off the soil. And I imagine by the time that I come back with the next flat, these plants will have perked up. This plant here, you can see, got burned. I had my grow light too close to it, so we'll see if that can recover. We are watering pretty much around the plants, but some of the constant feed gets on the leaves, and so we'll see some residue on that. Here's another leaf that got burned. You want to transplant when the plants get their true leaves on them, and you want to transplant them as far down as possible, but you want to transplant them so the crown is above the soil, which is the case here in all of these. This one I didn't get transplanted down as deep as I should, like I did over here. Same thing with this one. These look pretty good here. Well, I've got all of the bush beans transplanted, got the corn back on the heat mat. I leveled out the soil back in the original seedling tray. It looks like I was able to get those all transplanted without disturbing any of the other plants growing next to here, like the beets and butternut squash and cauliflower and cabbage and so forth. So I think it all turned out well. This is the second box that I transplanted, and I just watered them. And you can already see that the first one has already perked up and the plants are looking really good. I just had enough room to get all the plants planted in these two seedling trays. If I had run out of room, I would have planted the extra ones in 4-inch pots. I could have simply transplanted them from the first seedling tray or seedling flat into 4-inch pots, but I decided with the scheduled planting date in the garden, this will give them enough room in these flats, and I'll save room here in the greenhouse without having to have so many 4-inch pots sitting out. Either way works. I do like transplanting because it does shock the plant when I do transplant it, which is what I want to do in order to stimulate a stronger root system and a stockier, healthier plant. It'll set it back a couple days from foliar growth and put the energy into root growth, which is exactly what I want. Additionally, if plants are getting tall, transplanting them allows me to get them back down deep into the soil where they get more support. As you can tell, these plants were not leggy at all. They have great foliar growth, but I really like getting them transplanted. I hope this transplanting step helps you in your transplanting and garden production. This is LDS Prepper reminding you, if ye are prepared, ye shall not fear. The purpose of this video is to remove any fear that you might have about seedling production and transplanting seedlings.